I'm going to go to a little French film that's not all that old. It is called Climax, and it came out in 2018. It is from Gaspar Noé. You all know this filmmaker?
I know the filmmaker. I haven't watched any of his films yet.
It helps to know him before going into this movie, I would say, because well, at least see a few other films that he's done, because he goes out there. As far as filmmakers that don't want to follow the rules, he's probably the first name I would say in modern day filmmakers.
Mm.
He went crazy with this one, but it's one of his better ones. I just happened to check it out on it was on Prime Video, not a sponsor. And I said, yeah, let's see what he's up to these days, because I had seen an earlier film he did called Irreversible, which has one of the most uncomfortable scenes I've ever seen with Monica Bellucci. But that's another day on that one. So Climax, I've got the description here. It says, young dancers gather in a remote and empty school building to rehearse on a cold and wintry night. The all-night celebration soon turns into a hallucinatory nightmare when they learn that their sangria is laced with LSD. Yeah, it gets wild. So the whole movie kind of starts with interviews. It's kind of a little what Jordan Peele has been doing lately, where there's just this old television, and you see like a movie collection on either side of it, and we're watching what is on this old television, and we're seeing intertwined footage of interviews of all of these dancers. They were all accepted for this prestigious dance competition, and like the description said, they're in this empty school. After the interviews, we see this gigantic, huge choreographed number with all of them, and that's kind of when the opening credits happen. Also, it's like 20 minutes or 30 minutes into the film, and it's like this giant music video, and they're all done dancing, and they all celebrate, and they all go to the sangria, and slowly but surely things start to unravel, and yeah, there's this huge blizzard happening outside, so there's no escape. It's an insane movie. And another one that was in the disturbing list, and I just had to sit down for a while after watching that one. Like, well, I got some processing to do now. So, and it hit a little close to home, being a theater kid as well, and it's like, wow, this escalated. There's a moment with a child getting locked in a closet that has the fuse box and such, and these people just start to lose all morality, and it's a wild film. Anybody seen it?
I'll have to check it out. I've heard about it.
Definitely, it's on my list as well. My number 8 is definitely a mainstream, but it's one that's a classic for a reason. 1978's Halloween. From John Carpenter. So many ideas. It feels like we're introduced to this film. You have Jamie Lee Curtis as the Scream Queen, as the final girl, and just so many movies after it took inspiration and patterned themselves after it. It was really a groundbreaking film. That the classic scene of her hiding in the closet it just stays with you. Like, John Carpenter has a great way of creating those lasting and indelible images.
Yeah, I mean, nearly the perfect horror movie. It says something about a movie when they keep taking cracks at it years, decades later, and they just never quite make it as good. When they keep doing sequels and remakes, and it's like, yeah, but I could just spend my time watching the original.
Right.
I had the fortunate experience of seeing that film in the theater last week.
Yeah.
They re-released it, I think, in anticipation of the upcoming Halloween Ends. I went in wondering if I had actually seen the movie all the way through. I remember starting it a long time ago. I just couldn't remember if I had stuck with it or if something happened and I was trying to watch and do something at the same time. But seeing it on the silver screen seemed like something my lifetime needed.
Yeah.
And it made me just I love it so much more now. The first opening tracking shot and the breathing through the mask. I forgot that was the thing. Donald Pleasance in a very understated performance.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like the Steadicam was almost brand new at that point, right? Like only a few movies had used it before, and they're like, "What if we put the mask on it?" Like, you know, you can have the lens looking through his eyes. It's like that's a yeah. How can it be more iconic than that?
Yeah. One of two movies on my list I have not seen in the theater, and I definitely think that I would benefit, just like you said, seeing it in that medium.
I showed it. I show it in my class every fall. You know, because I'm cheesy like that. I'm like, haha, look, it's Halloween. We get to, but I did see it like at the drive-in, and I'm sure I've seen it in the theater. But I was old, and I mean, I was too young when it came out, obviously, and then I probably saw it like the sequel first on Cinemax or Movie Channel or whatever. The first of the Halloween series I ever saw in the theater was Part 4, which was you know, that's not cool. That's like the late 80s, you know. Okay. Good choice. I knew it was going to pop up. We knew that, right?
You can probably count on me to do the obvious ones. So.
Oh, and this guy on my shirt, The Undertaker, he totally stole a move of Michael Myers. He's got this. Well, when he first started, he would be like laying still after a clothesline or something on the mat, and he would do this sit-up thing.
And then he would go bump bump. Bump, bump. And then somebody in the corner going ding 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 ding.
That is absolutely a Michael Myers spot that he loves to do that, and gotta applaud the abdominal muscles on that, don't you?
I mean, again, talk about framing, because she's in the foreground and there's a man lying flat in the background, and you know what's going to happen because you wouldn't have it framed that way if it wasn't going to happen, and you're just like, just turn your silly ass around, you know. That's how it works.
Yeah.
So my next one kind of falls on the disturbing side. I'm sure Jeff probably could have guessed that I would be the one to bring up this movie, but one of my favorite horror movies of like the past 10 years at least, maybe more, is Hereditary. It's got a lot of polarizing opinions, but I just have the memory of like sitting there in the theater watching it, just slowly piecing together what exactly I was watching, and watching it for the first time, that will never be replicated. But I mean, it's essentially about the matriarch of a family dies, and very strange and unusual things start happening in the aftermath, and it's led in a career best performance from Toni Collette, in my opinion. But yeah, it's just it's real effed up. So be ready if you decide to watch it. And it is Ari Aster's, I think it's his feature film debut. And that is one where he does make you afraid of the dark.
That's a hell of a debut, that film. It definitely made me want to take note of Ari Aster and his future projects. And I'm still waiting for that third one. He's quite a filmmaker.
Like again, that feeling of being unsettled, like constantly on edge through the course of the movie, like having a panic attack almost or something, but just being like kind of trying to figure out what's going on, and then at the very end you go, oh, okay. It's weird for a movie to do that. At some point, normally you have that twist and it reveals, and then you have this sort of third act where everything falls from it, right? But this, it's like, okay, there's the third act, and I'm still trying to hang on here and figure out what it is, and then at the very end you're like, that's what it is. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, definitely. Really, and one thing just about like the craft of the movie, like there's a lot of playing with the audience's heads in what's really there and what's not there. Particularly there's a great, and this doesn't really give too much away. I say the matriarch of the family dies, and that kind of sets everything in motion. But there's a scene with Toni Collette in a dark room reading this letter that her mother had left her. And in the background of the shot, you can faintly see a dark silhouette, and then Toni Collette's character notices it, and then the lights come on very quickly and there's nothing there. It's so subtle, but it's so unnerving. And then also just a more kind of iconic scene towards the end. No spoilers, but you're in the attic and you hear this very distinct grating sound. And then the camera slowly pans up and reveals the horrifying exposure of what is making that sound. So yeah, just very disturbing, and I kind of love how just unnerving it is. But yeah.
It's a good word for it, unnerving. Yeah. And two of the actors in it, Gabriel Byrne and the guy who plays the son,
the naked brother.
Yeah.
Nat, is it Nat Wolff?
That sounds right. They both were on an HBO show that was short-lived called In Treatment. They're both excellent actors, and I think they both show
Alex Wolff.
Alex Wolff, thank you.
Nat Wolff is the other one. I knew it was one of the Naked Brothers.
Yeah, so they
wait, are they naked?
It was based on a kid's show called The Naked Brothers
Band.
Naked on a kids show.
I mean, what? Okay,
but Nickelodeon in the early 2000s. What you gonna do?
Everybody was naked on Nickelodeon in the early 2000s. I'm glad I stopped with Ren and Stimpy.
So in Treatment, wonderful show, and these two actors come from it, and they I think they played father and son on that show as well, and yeah, I mean, as much as is said about Toni Collette and her performance in that, and how overlooked by an Oscar it was, yeah, really watch those two as well. And Alex Wolff, I believe, actually broke his nose. In that.
I remember reading that.
Wild,
crazy. And then also, just without giving too much away of like how her character comes into the story, just another great performance on the list of Ann Dowd's career as well.
I was trying
from
Ann Dowd was in that, yeah.
The Leftovers.
Was she in the Leftovers?
Yeah, and Handmaid's Tale.
And Handmaid's Tale, and
Mass. Yeah.
Yeah, I think she's cool. Let's see. We're at
it's your turn.
Okay. I want to go with Phantom of the Paradise.
What is that? Oh man.
Have you seen Phantom of the Paradise?
I have not.
This came out the year before Rocky Horror, and it kind of got overshadowed by Rocky Horror. Ooh. So what's going on with this movie is it's kind of a cross between Faust and Phantom of the Opera.
Is that Paul Williams?
Paul Williams did the score, and he plays the primary antagonist. He's basically the devil, and he's the owner of a record label. So this is also a really wonderful satire in the 70s, criticism of the music industry and how it was already becoming too corporate for the artists. So you have that, but also you have this sort of tragic figure of the Phantom who's caught up in the middle of it, and he becomes disfigured and he becomes the Phantom. And of course there's a bargain with the devil and all of this. I don't need to give away too much of the plot, but that it's both disturbing and hilarious, and the music is really awesome. It's great because they're Paul Williams songs, but it's like if Paul Williams was writing as these really dark, heavy, sort of satanic songs, right? Because he's the devil, and then you have the beautiful ballads that the Winslow character, the Phantom, is trying to write to get the performer that he's fallen in love with to sing, the whole Phantom of the Opera plot, and then you just have the chaos that ensues when again you put all these elements together in the movie and how it just turns into just madness. It's awesome. So has anybody heard of that, just out of curiosity?
Sure haven't.
Just now.
Yeah. Check this out, man. And if you can't find it, I've got a copy you can borrow. Man, the musical score, I mean, the soundtrack album, it's so great. And it's got. Have you guys seen a movie called Used Cars? Comedy with Kurt Russell.
I'm aware of it. I'm trying to remember if I've actually seen it. I don't think I have.
There's a guy in this who plays like a Meatloaf type character where he's just this dark rocker, you know, and it's sort of the character you see in Rocky Horror, but his name's Beef, right? It's like he's a source of comedy. It's like comic relief in a movie that's already hilarious. So I don't know. Check it out if you get a chance.
Cool. Well, I'm really happy that you brought up music in film, because my next film is also going to talk about that a little bit. It is an often overlooked film called Ravenous from 1999. Anybody aware of this one?
That was actually going to be on my backup.
Really?
I just ordered that this week, and I always remembered liking the whole thing they had going on in that movie. The whole the world, the setting, you know.
Yeah, here's the description. Upon receiving reports of missing persons at Fort Spencer, a remote army outpost on the western frontier, Captain John Boyd investigates. After arriving at his new post, Boyd and his regiment aid wounded frontiersman who recounts a horrifying tale of a wagon train murdered by its supposed guide, a vicious U.S. Army colonel gone rogue. Fearing the worst, the regiment heads out into the wilderness to verify the gruesome claims. So this is a movie about cannibalism. And it is directed by Antonia Bird. She did a wonderful job with that. It's listen to this cast. It's got Guy Pearce as the lead. That's who John Boyd is. You got Robert Carlyle, who you might remember from The Full Monty or Trainspotting. David Arquette, Jeremy Davies, Jeffrey Jones, John Spencer. Yeah, I mean, what a cast. And the reason I bring up the music, I do have a fascination with films that bring a weird kind of music that probably shouldn't be fitting in the way that it is. I think of films like Carol Reed's The Third Man in this regard. But this one is the film's music is done by Damon Albarn, the frontman for Blur and Gorillaz. Oh. And he was very early in his career when he made this. And it's hard to find the soundtrack for this film, but if you can, I highly recommend it. The movie itself is admittedly a little goofy at times. It's more of it's on my thrilling list, not so much the disturbing list. But it gets very crazy, and there's some laughter here and there. Beautifully shot film too. I mean, there's like snowy waterfalls and such. So you've seen this, F-Bomb?
Yeah, I saw it when it came out, and I've seen it probably a couple of times. It pairs really well with Cannibal the Musical. If you're having it, it's got an interesting take on cannibalism. Again, it sort of builds a mythology, and that's cool. Some people find that a little off-putting, that it's so implausible, but I'm like, the movie's it's not striving for realism. You know, it's building an interesting story out of a near ridiculous premise, you know.
And the film kind of feels like very, very pro-vegetarian. You know, like it almost feels like propaganda at times in that regard.
Yeah, I don't know. I've often joked about taking in the spirit of the Wendigo, right? Just as a little reference for people who might want to check that out.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's it. Ravenous. I'll put that as my number 7, if you will.
All right.
Okay. My number 7 is one that's credited with reinvigorating the horror genre. From 1996, Scream from Wes Craven.
So
featuring Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, David Arquette, Skeet Ulrich, and Matthew Lillard. This is one I did not see in the theater. I saw it after the fact, after the hype, but managed to stay away from the spoilers. Does a fantastic job of infusing humor and exposing the ridiculous tropes of horror movies, and then using them without discounting them. It's beautifully written by Kevin Williamson. And talk about one that's spawned an entire franchise. There's, the latest Scream was out this year, featuring a lot of the cast returning. Just a fantastic film that once you watch it, you're like still trying to put it all together and realizing you've seen something kind of special. Like it just feels like, it's something, at the time, how groundbreaking it was, because not many, horror movies had lampooned themselves at that point and done it so masterfully.
Is that the one where Wes Craven has a cameo dressed up like Freddy Krueger?
It is.
Yeah. And in a scene with Henry Winkler.
Yeah.
The cameos are also very, very cool in that movie.
That was on my list as well, so I won't mention it later, but I'll just say I love that movie. It's one I'll watch every October. So much fun. At some points actually pretty scary and kind of screwed up.
The opening scene with Drew Barrymore really sets the tone. Like,
absolutely.
You don't expect him to go that far in the very beginning.
A good friend of ours, friend of the show, Maggie Hartman. I forget what her. Is it Magmataz when she's on the show? Her boyfriend tried to make her watch Scream and was like, "This is a horror movie that you'll like because it's so funny." She could not get past the first scene with Drew Barrymore. But
moments, as funny as it is,
it's a love letter of a film, isn't it? I mean, having Drew Barrymore at the beginning, there are shades of Janet Leigh in Psycho. I mean, it's and they're constantly bringing up other movies like. Did you not see Prom Night? You Never Go Alone, and things like that.
So my number 7, moving right along. This one, there's not going to be a ton to talk about, but Chainsaw McMasterface just mentioned it. I put Psycho on the list. It's top tier Hitchcock. It's a mystery. It's a thriller. It's disturbing. Amazing performance from Anthony Perkins. It's just legendary at this point. And the reason it's so fresh in my mind is there's actually a new documentary series on Shudder called Queer for Fear that is examining LGBT roots in horror, starting with Mary Shelley writing Frankenstein, who was a queer person. So a queer woman kind of created horror and science fiction all at once. It's really interesting, but they touch on Psycho and how Norman Bates is very much queer coded with the very codependent mother-son relationships. That's just one reason why it was so on the tip of my brain. And it's just always worth a rewatch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I believe the first movie to show a toilet flushing as well.
Indeed. That movie is it's almost too perfect. Yeah, it's I mean, the way it's filmed, if you give that same story to somebody else, it's not gonna
like Gus Van Sant.
Gus, if you give that same story, that same script to Gus Van Sant, it's just not gonna. Oh.
Like the shot-for-shot remake,
Exactly.
I mean,
what this movie needs to be in color.
I very much appreciate Psycho. I feel like when I watch it, I'm too much of into the filmmaking mindset of it because so much has been said about the shower scene and all the editing of it.
Oh my god!
Like try your best to place each edit point and put each scene in order. It's almost impossible to do. Like this shot, the silhouette with the knife, whatever. And the score by Bernard Herrmann is iconic. I feel like it is the Anthony Perkins show. Once you're past all the Janet Leigh stuff, like I'm entranced by his performance more than anything while I'm watching it. And it's and that final shot, hell yeah.
Yeah, that's another subversion of trope, right? Where it's like, oh, she's going to be the lead. Oh, she didn't make it past the first act. Yes. Also,
which does kind of connect back to that Scream comparison.
Yeah,
and that Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween because that's her mom.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, get to that. The idea, like the editing in that scene, how it creates that pace, that rhythm. It's like the cuts are real slow, and then they get to, it's one shot like a second. It's like, love it.
Yeah.
What blows my mind in a historical context is that people didn't spoil it for other people. Like, it went, months and months and people were genuinely surprised every single time they saw it.
Well, there was a warning on the poster.
Yeah, I just try to imagine that in the present day. It's unfathomable.
Everybody's so polite.
Yeah.
Alfred Hitchcock himself asked me not to tell you how it ends. So.
Yeah.
I got to do a favor for my old buddy Alf.
Okay, where are we at? I'm sorry.
It is your turn, F-bomb.
Yep.
Oh, it is. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. No, I got to go with another what I deem basically perfect movie. Hellraiser.
Yeah.
87 Hellraiser. Okay, so the thing about this that absolutely blows my mind is how they did so much with so little. So this is not a $50 million movie. It was made for like $800,000, and everything. I mean, he just committed to creating a filmed version of probably his most unfilmable story, and somehow it translated so well. They created through these effects the idea that they could bring people from one world into the other, and you kind of buy into it. You're kind of like, well, there's no way to really show hell. What would it look like? And so it's like, well, you just take the world and by degrees start making it more disturbing. And that's not even talking about how they created these whole iconic figures, the Cenobites, by blending this sort of super gory figure with like this BDSM iconography, right? I mean, there's just so much he did. There's so much subtext and thematic material that's perfectly infused with this relatively straightforward horror story, right? I can't say enough about how good this movie is. I mean, it's definitely one of my favorites. And the second one's okay. It's just you have sort of diminishing returns with this movie, but you can't, you go back to the original, and it's just you can't beat how good it is.
I just introduced that movie to myself this year. I believe it was this year. It might have been at the end of last year, but it was going to be in my disturbing list, and pretty high up there too, because the plot is just like, wow, okay.
You got to read the book, man.
Yeah,
Parker is just so great.
Yeah, you got some great movie monsters in the Cenobites, as you touched upon there, and obviously Pinhead, their leader, but look at the other ones too, because they got some characters.
Yeah, and I think that's where the recent remake kind of missed the mark. It's like it's okay as a horror movie, but it just kind of missed what worked so good in the original. I think movies do that sometimes, and we unfairly compare them to the original when they're trying to set themselves apart as a different thing. But again, it's like, well, I could just watch the original if I want.
My next film, we were just talking about Anthony Perkins being an excellent villain. I feel like this one hasn't been talked about as much anymore as it used to be, but I really liked The Cell from 2000. It's from director Tarsem Singh, and his films have a lot of his films have this visual quality to them in a production design standpoint that it's just so intricate and detailed. And he went on to do films like The Fall and Mirror, which was the Julia Roberts Snow White movie.
Don't bring up that movie.
Yeah, so like it's a little I'm a little downtrodden to see where his career is going, because The Cell just blew my socks off in its visual, it was like a candy store for a horror film fan. I mean, you've got all these wonderful costumes and special effects, and I brought up the villain, Vincent D'Onofrio, really gets to chew the scenery in this movie. Like the two leads are Jennifer Lopez and Vince Vaughn. Lopez plays a therapist who's trying to get, here we go. A psychotherapist journeys inside a comatose serial killer in the hopes of saving his latest victim. So Vincent D'Onofrio's character is comatose. They've got this equipment that she can get into his mind and in the dream kind of world. And Vince Vaughn is the police detective. There's a lady who's about to drown somewhere. They don't know exactly where, but there's this tank filling up with water. She's in it. They got to figure out how to get to her. And we get inside this serial killer's brain, and he has all of these visions for how he sees himself. And like there's a point where he's got these giant ring piercings, and it's like suspension kind of stuff going on. And he's got this twisted little game where he is he's got like a jack-in-the-box turning thing, and there's some gruesome viscera with intestines going with it. It's a very underrated film in my opinion. And it came out in a year where not a lot of people talk about the films of 2000. Because it was exactly the year right after one of the best years of film, 1999. But The Cell stands out for me.
Yeah, it was showing at the theater when I worked at the theater, so I would constantly be hearing that soundtrack at the end of the credits, and it is one of those most disturbing musical scores. It's really awesome because it's using such atypical instrumentation to create these soundscapes. But also, I think this movie works in terms of the style more than the story. Like the images, the way the images are put together, it doesn't really need to be coherent or to have all these little absurd plot details make sense, because you're looking at something and you're seeing the literal the recreation of the subconscious content of an insane mind. So nothing has to make sense, and you just leave the story behind, and you get disturbed by all of the stylistic content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's wild. Has anybody else seen The Cell?
Nope.
Check it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, my pick for number 6 delves into the subconscious as well.
Nice.
We mentioned Jordan Peele earlier and his unique voice in this area. My number 6 is Get Out from 2017, featuring Daniel Kaluuya, Allison Williams, Bradley Whitford, and Catherine Keener. I love the way he uses horror as a gateway for commentary. I think it's a masterful use of both of those things in this film. Like they work hand in hand, like the additive effect, like they make each other better in the story.
Yeah,
It's a wonderful movie.
Like you have horror settings, your cliched horror settings. It's like it's a haunted house or dark and scary woods, and he's like, no, it's white suburbia. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, some great performances from Catherine Keener and Bradley Whitford as the parents, and I mean Daniel Kaluuya in an Academy Award nominated performance.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the rare times the Academy chose to acknowledge a somewhat of a genre film.
Yeah, it was nominated for Best Picture and ended up winning a Best Original Screenplay Oscar.
It did win, yeah. It was really cool to see Jordan Peele win that. After watching him in all these,
it's another one of those debut directorial debuts.
I'm waiting for East West Bowl, the movie.
Oh yeah, I mean, once I saw him do that Gremlins 2 skit, I knew the guy had a mind for being a cinephile and such. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna follow this guy.
One of the funniest things I've ever seen.
It's wonderful. That's one of my favorite skits of all time.
So watch the Gremlins 2 sketch and watch the Abe Lincoln sketch from Whitest Kids You Know before watching either of those movies.
For context.
Do the proper homework. Yeah.
Cool.
So if it's good, I'll move on to my number 6, which is kind of an out of left field pick, but I was trying to think of movies that genuinely scared me and filled me with utter dread the entire time that I watched it. And I would describe this film as watching a car crash in slow motion and you cannot look away. And it's an unconventional choice for a scary movie, but I actually put Uncut Gems on here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
Sure.
It is so like it's like that's like I can't think of another way to describe it. It is watching a car crash in slow motion and you watch somebody make every wrong decision, and they somehow get out of it every single time. But every single time you think they're not going to, but you cannot, it just sucks you in and it just unnerves you. And it's one of those movies where you take a breath before it starts and then you don't breathe again until the credits roll. And it's like a career highlight performance for Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
Idina Menzel in there doing her New Jersey housewife thing. Just such a great movie. I don't think I've rewatched it since I saw it for the first time, just because it was one of those movies where you feel like you need a nap after, and just truly like a different kind of terror. But yeah, I put Uncut Gems on there.
Well, we'll say the connection, because of the snub of the Academy, Adam Sandler ended up making Hubie Halloween. That was his response to not getting an Academy Award nomination.
I don't even know what that is.
He said, okay, I'm going to go back to what I used to do before I took more serious roles. So we
said, I'll keep making bad movies.
Yeah, we have Uncut Gems to thank for Hubie Halloween, Netflix original movie,
which is kind of an overreaction considering he did win Best Actor at the Spirit Awards. I mean, like,
I'm sorry, the Spirit what?
The Spirit, the Independent Spirit Awards, the Film Independent Spirit Awards. He got Best Actor, right? I mean,
yeah.
And listen, I'm not here to defend Hubie Halloween. It's a bad movie, but
it was the number one movie when it was out on Netflix.
It sure is. That's. I think that would fall under Chris's definition of just a stupid fun movie to have on at a party or something.
Yeah.
It kind of fits the spooky vibe, but. Yeah,
and it's established as a Sandler verse as well.
Oh no!
Yeah, the Safdie brothers did Uncut Gems, and yeah, they love making films that are just constantly intense, don't they? I mean, I don't know if you've seen Good Time with Robert Pattinson. It's along the same lines. It's just like there's no letting up, But I mean, I don't know. I enjoy watching it, but.
Yeah, I'm right there with you that counts as a horror movie, though. Uncut Gems.
There are a few things scarier than actual gangsters, honestly. Like mobsters coming to break your legs.
There's nothing scarier about realizing this tendency in our own nature to just keep getting sucked further into the hole of our own ineptitude, right?
Yeah, you create your own
like you recognize bad decisions all too familiar. It's like, stop.
Right.
Okay, is it me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, it's got to be Near Dark. Has anybody seen
Oh man, I just remembered this movie just earlier today. I want to see it so bad.
Catherine Bigelow, I think. So I don't really like vampire movies that much, but I really like this vampire movie. I know this is my second vampire movie. I said Life Force earlier, but that's space vampires, really. This is great because it's Lance Henriksen, right? And it's Bill Paxton, and is it Jeanette Goldstein or Goldsmith? It's the three principal cast from Aliens, basically, that aren't Sigourney Weaver.
Oh, nice.
And just the it's a good narrative. It's a good story. It's also a very fun story. And it's possibly Bill Paxton's best performance. It
looked awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that came up on the YouTube video I watched, and Lance Henriksen was talking about how Bill Paxton discovered the script, and he's like, you and I should do this thing, and like, yeah, let's go for it. And while he's dressed up as the vampire, and he's looking really rough on one side, he would actually walk into truck stops looking like that and like freak people out, and he would say, you think I'm bad, you should see the other guy. And all that kind of stuff. So
yeah. Oh, and Tim Thomerson's in it, he's like a B movie guy, a comedian guy from the 70s.
Oh wow.
He has a small part. It's a really interesting movie. It's worth checking out.
Wonderful. I got to check it out. I'm not huge on vampire movies either, but that one looked like real juicy Bill Paxton kind of performance.
Yeah, very, very good. It's like Western vampires.
I miss him a lot. He's a
Oh, yeah.
performance I wish I could see more of.